Hello, everyone. Welcome to Something to Talk About Live. My name is Liz Owen. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the Director of Communications at PFLAG National. Great to have you with us again this week for Something to Talk About Live. And as always, I have with me my good friend and colleague, Jean Marie Nevada.
Liz Owen, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing really well. I'm super excited about today's conversation because it meant that I was learning a lot of new stuff. So I'm pretty excited.
Same, and our guests are awesome. So I'm not going to make anybody wait any longer to meet them. I'm going to turn it over to you.
We'll see you later, Liz. Thank you. Hey, everybody. My name is Jean Marie Nevada. My pronouns are she and her, or if you speak Spanish, ella. And every single week we get together to talk about something related to LGBTQ equality and inclusion. This week we are talking about people who are intersex and the issues they're facing, sometimes with complications from some of the anti-trans legislation that we are seeing out there in the States. So for those of you who would like to read this week's article or get the discussion questions, you should go to straightforequality.org/discussion series. And there you will find this week's article, which appeared in LGBTQ Nation by Juwan J. Holmes, entitled Anti-Trans Legislation Will Have Drastic Effects on Intersex People and Their Health Care. And so in the article, you'll learn some really interesting facts about the connections to much of the legislation we're looking at, but also the fact that about 1.7% of the world's population is in fact born intersex. And that advocates who are working on behalf of and for themselves are trying to stop a lot of the ways that people who are intersex are actually treated by the medical community. The UN has actually called many of the common procedures abuse and mutilation in some cases. So there are a lot of challenges out there, and there's also a lot to learn. And to do this, we have some really great guests. I have to tell you, when we thought about doing this story, we reached out to our friends at Interact. And right away, the first recommendation they made were to our new friends, Christina and Ori Turner, who are unbelievable advocates. I actually saw their TED Talk, which was called Intersex is Awesome, and it made me really excited about this show. So with that, I'd love to bring in Christina and Ori Turner.
Hi.
Hey, Christina and Ori, how's it going?
Good. Great.
Well, we are so very excited to have you here. As I said, we were talking about it earlier. When I watched your TED Talk, I was kind of jealous because, Ori, you've got some crazy public speaking skills. You're pretty unbelievable. So I want to start with you then. So for people who are joining us and who may not understand what it means when we are talking about folks who are intersex, could you explain it for them?
Intersex is when someone's born outside the binary norm. So their chromosomes could be like XXY or XXXY.
Excellent. And when that happens, people tend to be treated differently by the medical community. Could you talk a little bit just so people are familiar with some of the things that happen?
I'm having a mind blank. Sorry.
I want to just add to what they said that when people are born intersex, they can either be born with chromosomal differences outside of what we typically think of for male and female, or they can have reproductive internal differences in their anatomy or in their external anatomy. And so some of the challenges that they face is that a lot of times parents are pressured to do surgery soon after the child is born to solidify a gender, and they are basically guessing and then solidifying that guess with surgery and therefore taking away the autonomy of that child. Sometimes that takes away, there's a lot of repercussions. There can be like sexual repercussions, like for sexual activity and whatnot, but there also can be reproductive repercussions as well. Yeah. So it's a very hard topic that I think a lot of people just aren't aware of.
Yeah, I think you make a really great point. A lot of people, including people in the LGBTQ community, can say, or often I hear people say, I've never met anyone who's intersex. I don't know much about people who are intersex. So I was wondering if Christina and Ori, you could share your story a little bit about what brought you to this conversation.
So I was born intersex, and then mom grew up like telling me who I was and like letting me be myself. And then when I turned like 11, I decided I wanted to do a TED Talk. So then I did a TED Talk.
Well,
It's quite a story. I decided I was going to do a TED Talk, and
right.
so I did one.
Yep.
I think the determination that you have is pretty fierce.
So I had Ori at a birth center. So I didn't have them in a hospital setting. So I actually didn't find out about their intersex variation until they were 7 weeks old. And when they were 7 weeks old, I had like heard the phrase intersex before once in like a Dan Savage Seattle Weekly article in my younger years. And so it wasn't completely unfamiliar to me, but I had no idea. And so whenever I first received the news, I did a ton of research, and I chose to kind of go against all the advice I was being given. And I got second, third, and fourth opinions from all over the world, because my gut instinct was that it would be wrong to operate on a perfectly healthy baby. And I also just felt like 65 to 75% certainty of their guess of a gender was not enough for me. And I knew that someday I would have to have those conversations with Ori and explain the decisions I made for them. And it just wasn't in line with my parenting. I really want my kids to be their own people. And so I didn't do any activism, even though I felt in my heart and I supported all those that were. I just wanted them to have like a quote unquote normal childhood. And I didn't want them to feel pressured by my opinions or whatnot. But whenever they were old enough to learn about what happens to a lot of other intersex people, and they had met lots of other intersex people and kids, then they felt that they wanted to do something. They basically said to me, like, why haven't you been doing something about it? And I was like, well, I didn't want to violate your autonomy by putting you out there. And they were like, well, we should do something. And so like they wanted to do the TED Talk because they felt that educating people would really help, people understand, and that it would also help people, like Ori is also trans because they've transitioned genders. And it was also important to Ori that people understand that being trans is just as valid, like maybe it would help them understand that gender is not so black and white.
Ori, one of the things that stuck out for me during the TED Talk, I think you mentioned I believe it was at Gender Odyssey conference, and that really helped you sort of understand that, meet more people going through similar experiences and understand a little bit more about your identity. Can you talk a little bit about what you learned? Because your mom just mentioned that you identify as trans. So how did you figure out your identity, and what role did being with other people play in that?
So we went to Gender Odyssey. I forgot the year, but we were walking around, and I think I was like 6 or 7 at the time. And we were walking around, and we saw this booth of someone selling shirts, and I'm wearing one of their shirts right now. And they were intersex, and mom and them started talking, and the person we're talking about is Pigeon. I don't know if anyone's heard of them, but and we've stayed friends ever since. And it really helped me see that there were other people like me.
And being around those people, did it help you realize how diverse your community is, that people are having all different kinds of experiences? And did you hear stories that were like yours, but also really different from yours?
Yeah, I did. There were a lot of really happy stories, but there were also some sad ones.
Yeah, there really are. Christina, you talked about, when you found out about Ori's diagnosis, you went searching for answers, as a lot of parents do. What was that experience like? Because one of the things that I've kind of learned, and just trying to inform myself over the past few years as I've learned a little bit more, is there's so much information, but in many cases, it feels like you have to do a lot of hunting to connect with people sometimes. But when you find it, people are there.
Yeah, well, it was even harder back in 2007. So I will say, I found ISNA, the Intersex Society of North America, which is now a defunct organization.
Mm-hmm.
I've been retired. I don't know what the
Yeah.
word are for that. But that organization really helped me because they had so much information on their site, and it was made up of intersex people fighting for their rights and the human rights of intersex children. And they were actually able to link me up with an intersex person that lived in Seattle, and I got to meet up with them and chat, and it was so wonderful. And I will say that was like the bulk of resources, because they gave me tons of resources. Once I connected with them, I got connected with a lot of people, but it was a lot of Googling. And I tell people that I'm grateful for the internet. Like, I feel like that saved Ori as much as my ability to research, because if the internet wasn't a thing, I don't think I would have been able to make all the choices that I made, because I wouldn't have been able to do all that research and just see the effects of that trauma.
Yeah.
So I'm really grateful for that. And I mean, I think connecting with intersex people is the most important thing for parents. At least that's what I felt. Like, I love doctors, they're brilliant. And of course I respect their expertise. But when it comes to raising a child who's going to have a lived experience that is completely, strange to me and unique to me, it's my job as a parent to really seek out and educate myself on that experience. And I think that just diving into the community and asking intersex people what they would have wished their parents had done differently. So I always raised Ori to know exactly who they were. And I told them that, like, we made a decision, we made a guess on gender. And if that ever isn't right for you, you just have to let us know. And by the time they were like 5.5, 6, they were like, I feel like I'm pretending to be a girl. And they transitioned to being a boy. And they lived as my son for about 2 to 3 years until they met Pigeon, and they had a lot more connection within the intersex community.
Yeah.
And I do think that really helped them realize their non-binariness and that it's okay to like live in that space. And I think it helped me too as a parent, because I will say, like, I grew up in Texas, so I had a lot of educating of myself to do. I didn't have like queer family around me as a kid or anything, and I only had like one gay friend, and they were very closeted. So I had to do a lot of work and myself coming out and myself accepting myself. It's been, I feel like raising Ori has caused me to shift in the ways I've raised my other kids, and it's also caused me to shift in how I love and care for myself. So I'm really grateful for them and for all the intersex people along the way that really helped support me, because I just can't imagine Ori being this confident, like, stage loving individual without all of that support.
It's really interesting. I keep telling people, the older I get and the more I learn about gender, the less I feel compelled to hold on to sort of anything that's definite, anything that's binary, just letting go and just letting people be. There's a freedom in it. There is an unbelievable freedom in it. And the best part of that freedom is when people realize they don't have to twist themselves to fit into somebody else's space. And I'm so grateful to people like you who are having these conversations. So Ori, for a very young person, you are already a pretty fierce advocate and a really powerful voice. So as you've told your story to different people, so you did the TED Talk, but certainly that's not the only advocacy that you do.
Yeah.
As you tell your story, what kind of reactions have you gotten from people? And have you ever felt like some people, like maybe other kids, get it better than parents, or has it been random?
I would say that most of the reactions are good, like all of them. And as far as who gets it faster, I would say definitely like the younger generation gets it faster than the like older generation. But it's always different on the person.
Why do you think that is? Do you have any ideas?
I think it's that some people won't understand it right away, or like they've never heard of it, so they're like confused, or maybe they just like didn't even know it existed.
True. And people tend to be weird around stuff they don't understand.
Yeah.
And because it has intersex, has the word sex in it, like, we definitely think that's part of people's like squirminess. And a lot of people focus on the fact that some intersex people have differences in their physical anatomy. And that's always a frustrating aspect of it. So it's important to educate people that some people have quote unquote typical anatomy and they just have differences in chromosomes. There's many ways to be intersex.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually remember studying this in college and learning how many different variations there could possibly be. And it fascinated me at the time because I thought all of these are normal variations of just human development. It's just that they look or will act a little bit differently than some others do. And I think it's just so fascinating. So Christina, as you've met more parents and talked to people and shared your story, what kind of reactions have you had, both from parents of other intersex youth, but also from parents of kids who are not intersex and who are having very different experiences?
From other parents of intersex youth, I obviously get nothing but support. I sometimes have had quite a few people confide in me how much they regret the choices they made, and that they've asked me like how I made the choices I did, and it's such a hard question to answer. And then I feel like with everyone else, it's pretty good. Like I have had really positive experiences, but I do want to be honest that like when Ori was younger and they first transitioned genders, there was one friend where the mom basically said to me like they could no longer have sleepovers because now Ori was living as the other gender, and that like went against their belief system. And it was really, that was a difficult moment. And I think that along the way, there has been discrimination in regards to Ori being trans. So, and it's been weird for me as a parent, because I'm sure you can understand this, like people are, polite on the surface. So sometimes it's hard to understand what's going on. And I think it really helped me to have like trans and intersex friends that could like help me understand like, no, this is actually what's going on. And then so it can be challenging. I sort of like I will like look people up online and, stuff like that just before I decide how deep I want to go with them. I feel like anytime you're raising an LGBTQIA kid, like that's probably what you do, right? Like you want them to live a safety net. So, and even for myself. So it is mostly positive, I will say.
And so, Ori, as a person who identifies as also is trans identified, have you been able to develop a network of friends who have had similar experiences to yours, or are you still kind of mixed bag of friends?
Mostly a mixed bag of friends. Like I have some friends that are like trans or intersex, and then I have some friends that are like straight. And some of the friends that are trans or intersex are like far away, so I don't see them often. But then I do have a couple friends that are like trans, and we talk often.
That's good. That's good. I think it's important to have people who kind of know what some of this is like. So one of the things that we're always talking about at PFLAG is how legislation can affect people's lives. And right now we know there is a lot of anti-trans legislation out there. There's over 140 pieces out there, and I think it's 30 states. And it's ugly because a lot of it, or a significant portion, has actually made some progress. As you look at this, how does that feel? Is it scary? Does it make you even more committed? What is it like? Because it is an attack very much on people like you. And that's one of the really interesting things about this week's article, that people aren't talking about the fact that a number of these bills are going to have an effect on both people who are trans as well as people who are intersex. So what's it like out there, Ori?
I think that's bad. Like you should just let people live how they want to live, and you shouldn't like force anything on them or like tell them like, hey, you can't do this or you can't be that. Because like you should just let people be who they are.
Yeah.
But also you've said to me that like you're fighting for things to change.
Yeah.
But that if they don't, like you might want to leave America. Like, which is so sad and hard as a parent to hear, like they're basically like willing to fight the good fight, but they've said like they might want to leave and live in a different country if things keep progressing the way they are. So I think that's important to point out, because I think people really need to realize like it affects kids. You think they don't know everything, and maybe they don't, but like they're still very much affected by all of this. It's like it is a tough subject, because intersex people, especially just with the sports, back when it was only the sports bills, then it was even hard. How would Ori fit, right? Like and I think honestly it probably keeps them somewhat from organized sports. And
I was listening to a story of one of my colleagues who had talked to a dad of a young trans girl, and he was really stressed out about how he was going to have to explain to his daughter that she can't do school sports this year because she happens to live in a state where one of these bills passed. And it was absolutely heartbreaking when you think about the important role that sports plays, for example, in just not just, obviously it's good for you, but I mean, social development and understanding the world around you, and competition and sportsmanship, or sportspersonship, we should probably say.
Exactly.
And it's really sad. So as we look at things like this, obviously we are all really focused on how we change stuff. And I know that when we talk about allyship in the LGBTQ space, we're specifically talking about gender identity and sexual orientation. There are certainly some easy ally behaviors that a lot of us can talk about and a lot of people know. When it comes to people who are intersex, it's different. So we need to learn some ally behaviors. So I am going to look to you, Ori, and to you, Christina, to do some teaching for us. So for those people who are out there, first of all, who want to be more inclusive of people who may have intersex conditions, what kind of things should they be doing? Or what kind of things should they not be doing? Any advice?
Never assume someone's pronouns. Like, you should always ask them and say, like, hey, what are your pronouns? And then just, like, be respectful. Don't ask them any, like, personal questions. And, like, don't treat it like something that's different. Just treat it like something that's normal.
And I think is a really good one. Respect everybody's pronouns. And pronouns are for all of us. It's not just for people who are trans or non-binary. Christina, what stuff are you telling people?
I would say support Interact in their fight legislatively to help protect trans kids however you can, whether by sharing their posts or donating if you are able to do so. And outside of Interact, I would say, like, really support trans people as much as you support intersex people, and recognize how these bills that are against trans people are harming more than just trans people. But I don't want to be asking people to care just because of intersex people. Like, care because people just deserve to be themselves, and gender definitely is not what most people think it is, and there's a spectrum, and we need to make space for people in society and in our culture. And even in regards to the sports thing, I want to say sports are really important. And actually, even if you don't want to play sports, it's the equal access. You need to feel that you have the equal access of all your peers. I mean, Ori doesn't want to join the military, but they were very upset at that whole thing too. So I just think that it's really important that we all have the same access and opportunity for the same things, you know, regardless of your race, sexual orientation.
It's just having the option to participate or the option to not participate.
Yeah.
That level of freedom is really, really critical. What about in
And
terms of
also another bit of advice that's really good, talk about this at Thanksgiving. Talk about it with your family. Talk about with your family and friends that you learned about intersex. Like, breach the conversation so that more people can realize this, you know, like, difference in biology that we should all know.
And I think also listen to people's stories. I mean, I think your TED Talk was so fascinating to me because even though I had read probably a dozen different books about people's stories, yours was different again. And it was a different tone. And Ori, you just told your story so well. I think it was really powerful for me. Any other stuff, Ori? Any stuff about language that you would suggest that people try using, or things that people shouldn't be saying?
I don't know. I just know, like, don't assume people's pronouns. That's the big thing.
I think that that's a really, really big, important one. So where do you find that you sometimes hit challenges with people when people just don't understand? What do you think the source of their struggles sometimes are? Is it that they don't understand gender, or do you think people are just really kind of closed-minded sometimes?
I think it could be a mix of both. Like, it depends how you were raised. Like, some people are like, oh, but isn't that just like X, Y, and Z? And it's really not. It's like you gotta change your, like, how you explain it to fit different people's needs.
Yep. Really, I wish everybody could get this so easily. You're just making it too simple for everyone. Christina, anything to add to that?
I think that there are a lot of internal biases that we all hold, and we all get socialized to fit in, and there's lots of aspects of that that can come up. And when you're learning something is different than you thought it was your entire life in regards to gender, I think for some people that can be really uncomfortable. And I definitely have found that people who are extremely religious have struggled a little bit more sometimes because things are very defined for them, and it like, they feel like it disrupts that aspect as well. But I just think that, I don't know, like, it's It is, I think Ori's right that like you just have to simplify it and kind of like cater to who you're talking to. And I think that people themselves, like all of us, need to hold on to a little bit of that childlike wonder that allows us to take in new information. And I think that's something that as we age, we kind of lose. So,
Yeah.
like that's the big challenge is like when people really push back, it's more that they're just holding on to some idea that's really important to them or they think it is. But I don't know, most people come around, and I actually find that we've had some family and friends who even weren't accepting of the trans community, that when they really learn more about Ori and intersex people, it really opened their minds and now they're supportive of everyone. So I just hope that we get more and more people like that to kind of open their minds and vote in ways that allow children like Ori and all LGBTQI kids to just flourish and be themselves.
Yeah, it's hard sometimes listening to people tell their stories for me, and I listen to what you're saying, and I think this should be so simple. This really should be as straightforward and simple as you're making it, Christina, as you're making it, Ori, and yet I feel like we very willfully complicate these issues in tremendous ways, not realizing the cost that it is to so many people when that happens. We're not talking about abstract laws. We're talking about real people. So you mentioned Interact, which definitely is one of our partner organizations, and we really do love the work that they do. Were there any other resources out there that were really meaningful to you? Because many times, and at PFLAG, we get these phone calls, people call and they're in panic. What are those first things that you recommend to people?
Well, obviously Interact, and you could also follow Pigeon Pagonis. And they're my friend that makes the shirts,
and
they're
done
really
a lot
cool.
of YouTube videos.
Yeah,
and Pigeon and their friend Saifa, who's also a friend of ours, started an organization called Intersex Justice Project. I believe Saifa is the only one heading it up right now, but that organization is the only Black-led intersex organization in North America. I might be on this whole side of the globe. And so that's really important, and they're working towards intersex justice as well, and they've even worked with Interact. And then I feel like I'm forgetting someone.
I don't know. I don't think we are.
Oh, there's also Interconnect is the support group for intersex people.
Okay.
There's not a lot of educating for the public there, but anytime you learn someone is intersex, or if a friend or family member comes out to you, like make sure they know that Interconnect exists, and it's a support group for intersex family members and friends. And
Thank you. Thank you so much. Because I think sometimes there are a lot of things out there. You're not always sure which ones are the best resources. So I love asking people who are doing the work for their recommendations. I think that's so important. And it looks like Liz is messaging and says that we actually have a question from a viewer, and we would love to bring Liz in so we can have her read that one off for us. Thanks, Liz. Oh, I think you're muted, Liz.
Because it's not like I've been in virtual sessions and broadcasts for nearly 2 years now. So everyone
yesterday.
Fill in your bingo card. I was muted. We do have a question. Is whether there's a term that you gravitate to that's maybe different from trans or intersex that you hope or wish more folks would be using?
No, I think trans and intersex are really good words.
That's good to know. I know there can sometimes be difficulty around, vernacular that feels comfortable to people. And, we want to encourage then people to use those words comfortably.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I think that it would just be great if people were less uncomfortable with the word sex.
Yeah.
That would just be great, but we can't fix everything.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, the happiest day of my life was when we started saying, please don't continue using the term homosexual. It just really brings the wrong thing up first. It's not about that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I wish for the same thing for you if we suddenly come up with the other word.
I don't know if y'all are aware, but before intersex, it was called disorder of sexual development. And that was even worse because it's not a disorder. And so it's a very it's been hard just to get to this term.
This is progress.
We love that.
Yeah.
Well, it looks like, unfortunately, we are once again at time. Somehow we managed to run through 30 minutes so quickly every week. So, Ori, I need to tell you, I'm pretty sure I'm going to see you do some pretty big things. So I'm really excited that I'll be able to say, oh, I knew them way back when. So thank you for what you're doing. And Christina, you rock. Thank you for everything that you're doing. I hope that both of you will come back and visit us and tell us about what you're up to sometime soon.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having us. And Intersex Awareness Day is next
Tuesday.
It's
next Tuesday. And if you wanted to get a shirt like this, it's you just look up Too Cute to Be Binary, and they said they'll probably have some more this Christmas. They're really comfy.
Yeah, that is, look up Too Cute to Be Binary and make sure you get the shirt, because I really like that one.
You get it from Pigeon Pagodas, because I'm sure there's other imitators out there.
Yeah,
so more pigeons.
Really comfy shirts and sweaters. Yeah. So yeah, I hope you guys have a good day.
Thank you so much, Christina and Ori. We will see you soon. And thank you, Liz.
Bye.
Well, everybody, I said that was going to be a great show, and it really was. We will see you again next week, where, if all planets align, we will be broadcasting to you from Puerto Rico, which will be our first remote show ever. We are really excited about that. But until then, we will leave you with the same advice we do every single week, which is to run fast, laugh hard, and most of all, be kind. And please, if you have not done it yet, please, 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 please get vaccinated so we can all be together again sometime soon. My name is Jean Marie Navetta. This is Something to Talk About. We'll be back next week. But until then, if you need any help, visit us at pflag.org. Bye, everybody.